What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel. And if you guys are new, welcome. We are continuing our Arc 3.0 builds today with an absolute banger of a Warlock build utilizing the trusty dusty Crown of Tempest exotic helmet. Now, before we jump into this build, make sure to go down into that description to enter this giveaway for a Pixio 144Hz monitor with that 1 millisecond refresh rate. This thing is absolutely nasty, so make sure to enter down below in the description. So starting off right here for our Stormcaller build with Crown of Tempest, we're going to be running Stormtrance because it pairs with that exotic the best. Now for our abilities, we're going with our Healing Rift as well as Strafe Glide. Seems to be the most consistent for that PvE action. Now for our melee, we're going to be running the Chain Lightning melee, which has that extended range, and it jolts our targets, which is super important for this build. Chaining lightning to nearby enemies. When we are amplified, it has an extra set of chains, and we are going to become amplified very, very easy with this build. Now for grenades, I'm going with Storm Grenades because we will be using these to create Arc Elemental Wells, and with the ability spam that Crown Tempest gives, I think this is the best for damage, jolting enemies, as well as just that add suppression in general. Now for our two aspects, we're going Arc Soul, which is also super important for this build because those Arc Souls count as Arc abilities when they get defeats. When we are amplified, those Arc Souls are supercharged and have that increased fire rate. For our second aspect, we're going Electrostatic Mine, so defeating targets with arc abilities. Being jolted or blinded creates ionic traces. Collecting those ionic traces also make us amplified, and ionic traces give us arc ability energy back faster. So having this on, we're going to be jolting, blinding targets all over the place with our exotic weapon that we're going to be using paired with these fragments. So we're going to become amplified, have a bunch of targets that are blinded and ionic traces to just continually spam our abilities and get back our super very fast. For our fragments starting out here, we got Spark of Ion, so defeating those jolted targets create ionic traces, and we're jolting targets via our melee as well as our grenade. Next off right here, Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to also create ionic traces. We're going to be using Arc Heavy and a special weapon as well. Third, for our fragments, we got Spark of Shock, so this is where our arc grenades jolt targets, which comes into play with our aspect here in defeating those targets with abilities or jolted to give us more and more ionic traces. And then finally, when we are amplified, your special weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. This is Spark of Beacons. This is going to come into play because we're using Trinity Ghoul to blind everything, creating ionic traces everywhere, especially with those Arc Souls getting ability defeats, creating them via Electrostatic Mind. So for our weapons here, we're going to go with the Deliverance Fusion Rifle with Demolitionist. So when we get defeats with this, we're able to get that Storm Grenade back even faster. Now we're using Trinity Ghoul because of its exotic perk, Lightning Rod. It allows us to shoot those arrows that split into 3, chaining lightning everywhere between enemies, causing very good ad clear. And then with those fragments that we have on, which create that blinding effect for special weapon defeats when we are amplified, and we become amplified basically instantly with all the arc defeats that we are getting. And then tying up our weapons right here, we have the Sleepless Rocket Launcher with the Arc Burn and Chain Reaction that comes from the Dreaming City. Now for our armor that we have and our mods that really make the build as well, just complementing it for our aspects and fragments, we're going to be running that 100 resilience and 100 recovery. So we're going to be able to throw down our rift as much as possible to get our Arc Souls procced because those are super key for this build. Now on our Crown of Tempest helmet that this build is all around, you can see arc ability or jolt final blows increase the recharge rate of our arc abilities and extend the duration of Stormtrance. So when we're in our super and we're getting defeats, especially with waves and waves of enemies, it feels like we are in our super forever with this helmet. And with that extra recharge rate with arc ability defeats, hence those arc souls that we are using, as well as jolting targets via our grenade and melee, they all pair together to give us that increased recharge rate for our abilities, which just in turn proc this again, and it's just that positive feedback loop that we are using to spam our abilities. Now for the mods on this, we're going to go with elemental armaments, so we have chances to create arc elemental wells with both our Trinity Ghoul and our Sleepless Rocket, and then we're using ammo finders for both our Deliverance as well as our Rocket. Now on our arms right here, we have 2 sets of focusing strikes, so it grants us class ability energy when causing damage with our melee, so allowing us to again proc our well a little bit faster so we can get our arc buddies back when we are amplified, in turn creating again just those arc ability kills and more ionic traces for us. On top of that, melee well maker, just another way that we're going to be creating arc elemental wells. Now we're using those arc elemental wells on both our chest piece and our boots with Font of Wisdom, so picking up these elemental wells that match our subclass grants us temporary significant increase to our intellect. So this basically takes our intellect all the way up to 100 for a short period of time, but because we're going to be using it on our chest piece and our boots, it's going to improve that recharge rate time, so from 7 seconds up until about 12, and you can pair this with up to 4, which increases it up to about 22 seconds. And the reason that we can stack 2 versions of Font of Might is because on our class item we have elemental time dilation, so those elemental well mods that grant us time limited benefits can now stack, hence why we can stack 2 Font of Wisdoms here. Now on top of that, we also have Trace Evidence, a seasonal artifact mod, so defeating combatants affected by arc debuffs spawn ionic traces, which comes into play because we're blinding everything with our Trinity Ghoul here, based on this fragment spark of beacons, so that arc special weapon final blows blind enemies, and it's just a perpetual feedback. Like you can see, it's so easy to just clear ads upon ads with this loadout here. All of those ionic traces coming back to us, as well as generating arc elemental wells via our melee and our arc weapon defeats, blinding enemies, and then all of that coming into play with Crown of Tempest, just allowing us to spam ability after ability after ability. And then when we are in our super, we just basically never leave it when we're getting defeats, because it just keeps giving us back a little bit of energy, and it is a great ad clear build in my personal opinion. Something taking this in and doing lost sectors, gambit, normal strikes, just anything in the PvE realm for Arc 3.0 in your Warlock. This is the trusty dusty helmet, like I said. Absolutely love using this, grabbing that loot. Catch keep super fun this season with it. We have a lot more builds to come out for our classes and some of the new exotics that we have, especially the new helmet for our Warlock, which takes into play ionic traces as well. So that's going to come into effect soon here, but hopefully y'all can try out this build. It's absolutely slapping. Love to use it right now, and I hope you guys do too. So thank you guys again for watching and all that support. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.